everyone, and welcome back to another episode of XCOM 2. This is Bowtie SoFly, and you'll notice that we're in the middle of a mission right now. That's because when I previously saved, unfortunately I couldn't save on the battle preparation screen, so I had to actually enter the mission before I was able to save anything. But just know, haven't done anything else since the last video. You'll also notice that there is no game sound. When I recorded, unfortunately, for some reason my microphone screwed up, the quality was really grainy, and it affected how the voiceover and the narration sounded. So ultimately I decided rather than have the game sound and have really terrible voiceover audio, I would at least give you decent voiceover audio. So nonetheless, you can still see my gameplay happening, and I will be discussing what happened in this episode. Of course, obviously you have to record now in post, but in the future, I'm going to make sure that the mic is working properly and that I can fix whatever issue is currently going on, because it's affected my ability to record other episodes as well. But all that aside, as you can see, we're moving people forward here. Not too far. Obviously, we know where at least one sectoid is inside that building near that relay. So at this point, just advancing everybody up. You'll notice I did take the time to decorate my character at least, so Bowtie SoFly is looking good there in red as a sniper. And now it's the aliens' turn, so they're of course going to hit this. And that'll about do it for them, so back to us. Now of course, snipers being effective, or most effective from the roof, I'm going to try and move my character up there. And we'll of course still be chilling out in full cover, just in case we do spawn anybody. And as I get right about over there, you can see there is an enemy towards the top right of the screen, so we are going to not trigger them, but at least have them in sight. So there we can see there is an Advent officer and an Advent troop. So we can see at least 4 enemies on screen right now. Of course, we have to make sure we stay out of the vision of the civilians, otherwise we will blow concealment. And at this point, we're just advancing up, making sure we can get everyone in position to get a nice surprise attack. And Mary Wilson, a character I quite enjoy, as you'll see throughout this episode, will certainly be earning her place on our team. So, the officer and the troop are going to move forward, try and get closer to there. Going to fire off a little pot shot. Now, obviously this puts us in somewhat of a rushed position because we have to make sure we get to the relay and keep it safe before the enemies manage to get it. So, right now we know there's at least 4 enemies, so I'm going to start moving people into range. You can see we did have a flank there, but moved away from that. We have a flank with Maria as well. And at this point I'm just getting people ready for what is to come. So at this point I'm checking out, seeing, okay, can I afford to make that happen? I don't tend to use the regular fire for my heavies or my grenadiers as much, unless I have to, because obviously with a heavy weapon they're a little less accurate, especially from range. So at this point, just kind of throwing people into Overwatch. And now we're going to go ahead and take the shot on the Advent officer. And kaboom, critical hit, down for the count. That is how you take out an officer. Of course, that will blow our concealment, and as our enemy Advent troop decides to move, oh, not so fast, sir. Mary Wilson, one of our rookies, already proving herself very useful. So she went ahead and earned herself a promotion, which is nice. And the rest of our team sits in wait with Overwatch to see whether or not we will be attacked by the enemies. The relay is going to take another 4 damage, so it's starting to pile up a little bit, but it's still not that serious, as you can see. And now I'm just kind of surveying my options, figuring out what we want to do next. I'm going to try and go for a few flanks here, so I move behind full cover, and we do finally trigger the sectoid and the Advent officer, or I'm sorry, the Advent troop. And at this point, I'm glad it was my grenadier that was over there, because I'm going to be able to fire a grenade right into the wall and take out not only the Advent troop, but also get some damage on the sectoid and open him up by removing his cover. For those of you who are watching who aren't as familiar with the series, cover is a very important element, as it will provide defensive bonuses and allow the person being fired upon to have more of a chance of not getting hit. So basically blowing apart a wall, as you might expect, makes it a lot easier for me to hit other enemies. So now the relay's finally in range. And Central's talking to us about it. So at that point I was kind of surprised I didn't have a shot with my sniper on the sectoid, but it's all good because Mary Wilson's going to go ahead and get the crit. She is truly rocking some MVP status. Alright, so going to advance forward. I believe, if I remember correctly. Recorded this about a week ago, so trying to go off of memory here. Yeah, we advance forward, just kind of get everyone in position. Having taken out all the enemies we've seen so far, I know there's at least probably 2 more people on the map, so I decide to advance forward carefully, making sure that I'm in cover in case we do trigger any enemy pods. And after some long deliberation, I decided, you know what? We'll defend on that side. Sadly, couldn't get full cover on both sides, but luckily we don't trigger anybody. But we do see that there's at least a sectoid over there as they fire on the relay. So now I'm going to try and figure out where they're at. Get a little bit better sense of how many we have left to deal with. So at this point, going to try and still stay in full cover. Again, I am, as one of my viewers has pointed out, a little bit more of an aggressive player, so I'm doing my best in these episodes to try and make sure I'm taking advantage of full cover and I'm not just running out in the middle of enemy groups and just trying to blow everything up. So, trying to play a little bit more tactically. I know. Smart for a tactics game. Alright, at this point I don't have great shots with my sniper, so I try to move a few more people in position. And at this point I'm testing out to see, can I get him with a frag? I can, so I decide, you know what, let's go for the numbers advantage here. We're going to load up a frag. And once it's in there, say goodnight. So now it's us versus the sectoids. And at this point, I'm still deciding whether or not I want to bring Maria forward or whether or not I want to try and have her hack. So I decide, you know what, let me check out, see whether or not there's any bonuses worthwhile here. And sadly, it was only squad sight, which, although useful, not necessary considering right now we have at least a 4-on-1 advantage on the sectoid, so rather than potentially upset enemies, I decide to just abandon the hack. Alright, so at this point I'm still deciding what I want to do with Maria Serrano, our specialist. And instead decided to go with Mary Wilson. I'm going to move her over and get her behind full cover. This will allow me to have a little bit better vantage point against the sectoid in case it decides to advance a little further. At this point, my odds of hitting it with my sniper are only getting worse, or my sharpshooter. So I'm going to advance her forward a little bit. And I decide, you know what, 28%. Thought it might work. It did not. So the sectoid's going to stay at full health. And I decide, you know what, let me just overwatch with my sniper. If it tries to move, I can at least maybe get it with a shot. And luckily for me, I was right. So rather than taking the 30% shot before, I took the overwatch shot, and it wound up working out in my favor. Now at this point, I get a little bit worried because I thought he was going to go for the mind control. Instead, just decides to panic her. And luckily, she doesn't do anything stupid. She instead takes out the wall that's blocking the sectoid. So, trust me when I say a lot worse things can happen when one of your troops panics. So that was definitely best case scenario out of the overall terrible scenario. So now I'm going to try and move Smitty, Jacob Smits. Try to get him into a flank. Don't get the flank, unfortunately. And sadly, I do miss my shot, which again is why I don't always rely on heavies for the shots like that. But we're going to advance a little bit more with our specialist, Maria. And at this point, I'm going to go for the 40% shot. And what a surprise, 40% of the time hits none of the time. So I check and see, I've got another 35% chance to hit. Not amazing at all. So decide to go with another Overwatch shot. Worked for us before, and it'll stop him from moving anywhere. So he decides to go ahead and resurrect and grabs the Advent troop that I killed a couple turns earlier. So now we not only have the sectoid to deal with, but the Psy Zombie. For those of you not as familiar with the series, she went ahead and recovered. When you kill the sectoid controlling the Psy Zombie, or in previous games killed the sectoid that was powering up another sectoid, you actually can kill both because they establish a mental connection, and when the host dies, the thing that it's powering dies as well. So in this case, I finally do get the flank. Still not 100% shot, but you know what? It's good enough. So sectoid goes down, and of course in a couple of seconds, we're going to see Psy Zombie go down. There he goes. We pick up some equipment and end the mission. Luckily, the sectoid was the last of the enemies we had to take down. So, killed 7 out of 7, saved the relay, and got a flawless victory. Not too bad if I do say so myself. All in a day's work. So now we're going to head back, check on the stats, see if anybody else advanced. As you can see, Mary Wilson definitely put in some solid work for a rookie. And Jacob Smits did most damage and made the most attacks. Got a couple new records for cover and damage per attack. Again, I do apologize about the lack of game audio. In the future, what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to test out the mic right before, and if it's still having feedback issues or is still garbling the sound really terribly, I'm just going to record the episode itself with sound and then do a voiceover, kind of like I'm doing now, later. Let me know if any of you are extremely opposed to me doing post-recording commentary, and I'm happy to try and figure out another means of making this work, but for now, that's what we'll plan on going with. So, Mary Wilson is going to go ahead and advance, and she becomes a Ranger, one of my favorite classes. So, apparently her take no prisoners style is going to allow her to get right up in people's faces and try and kill them. So, at this point, I have the choice to go with either blast padding, which adds explosive resistance and a point of armor, which is very useful. But, as I mentioned, I'm somewhat of an aggressive player, so I like the ability to shred enemy armor, especially when dealing with armored ground units and potentially dealing with any sort of turrets, because the turrets in this game have 3 or 4 armor each, at least, once you get later on into the game. So I like the ability to shred some of that armor, making them easier to take down. Same thing holds true with some of the robotic enemies that we'll be facing, such as the Advent mechs. So at this point, I have to decide between medical protocol and combat protocol for our specialist, Maria. With my specialists, I usually like to go a little bit more supportive rather than like combat medics or combat hacker in this case. But I'm having a little bit of trouble deciding, do I want to go medical? Do I want to go combat? Ultimately, I do decide on medical because I like the ability to use Gremlin Heal on distant allies and later on to use Gremlin Heal several times. But luckily we picked up Hoda Majid, who is going to help increase our ability to get things produced quickly. We also picked up an Illyrium core, which is going to be very useful in creating specialized ammo and specialized armor later on. So again, any Illyrium cores you can get, especially early on, will be very beneficial in helping you to beat this game. So at this point, we're starting to excavate, get rid of some of that alien debris. In doing so, we'll be able to build some stuff as well as get some supplies for clearing that out. So at this point, I believe we have something going on with command. Yeah. Oh, and I'm really sad that you're not able to hear the audio for this. Trust me when I say I'll have him on next time, but this character should be very familiar to those who have played the XCOM series before because he is the one that used to give us the council missions back when XCOM still was a worldwide united front against the alien menace. So basically what he's telling us is there's some stuff going on. More and more people are starting to go missing. And they believe that Advent is actually working on a larger project, which could be potentially devastating to mankind and to the XCOM resistance. So, they mentioned that nearby there is an Advent black site. Black site are kind of like, think of them almost as like bosses. They're not any boss characters, however, they are the more difficult missions. These are Advent facilities which are specifically designed for experimentation and research, and so they are very heavily guarded and tend to be very difficult to breach. So they're kind of the boss level type of missions, at least early on. So he tasks us with establishing contact with other groups in the area and ultimately trying to gain more intel about the black site before we attempt to breach it. So at this point, we're getting called, I believe, to the bridge. And I believe there was some sort of audio commentary happening at the time with this. So we go ahead and go to the bridge, and I believe we'll get a chance to overview this a little bit. And there is the area we believe the black site to be in now. Even though we can see the spot on the map, technically we don't know where the black site is, so it's important that we kind of work to establish contact in the area, gain some fellow resistance, and see what we can do to take that black site down. So, as it says, we are now tasked with contacting the resistance in the black site region. We're going to make contact, fly in there, and we also need to research resistance communications. So in order to establish contact, we're going to have to do a little bit of research. So we go ahead and see there's a mission up there. I figure we'll pass some time on our current research projects. It'll take 5 days, but we'll get some more supplies. Supplies being the money that we use to purchase different things. So go ahead and scan the disabled truck. A couple days in, we finish hybrid materials. So I believe that gives us access to the nanoscale vest and, yeah, plated armor. So nanoscale vest basically just gives us an extra point of health. It can be very useful early on, especially when 1 point of health is enough to separate you from dying. And I decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to look at modular weapons. Again, I like to get a little bit of offense and defense going early. I know I should be researching other things, but I like my troops to be able to survive in the field, because the less money I spend on things related to healing them, the more I can spend on research and other things later. So we finish up, we get our supplies, head back to the Resistance HQ, and we got about 1 day left to clear the alien debris. That goes by pretty quick. And now we can decide what we want to build. So at this point, I'm trying to decide between an advanced warfare center, which is one thing that helps my troops to heal faster, meaning that I have to have fewer troops since they can get back into the field quicker, and the guerrilla tactics school, which allows me to purchase some squad-related upgrades. I decided to go with the advanced warfare center because I like my troops to be able to heal faster. So once that's in place, I decide I'm either going to build the guerrilla tactics or possibly the research comm next. So modular weapons are ready. So we can now do magnetic weapons if we want, but in the meantime, I'm going to have Dr. Tigan do an autopsy on the Advent officer. And in doing that, we'll gain some story-related info that'll be important to us later on. So that'll be done in just a couple of days. We head out into the world to pass a little bit of time. We gain a little bit of more intel. And we get an incoming transmission from Central. So they go ahead and show us that there is a mission they'd like us to do. It's Operation Silent Spark, and it will reward us with a scientist and some intel, both very useful. Scientists helping us to take less time when it comes to researching and finding new things out, and intel being used for different upgrades later on. So that gives us a very important mission to do. However, in the meantime, that is where I decided to call this an episode. Again, that mission would probably take us at least 10-15 minutes, maybe more, maybe less, but I don't want to have these episodes drag on. I'm mostly going to be aiming to try and fit between 20 and 30 minutes per episode, with obviously things like black site missions or later game content taking more time. But for now, if you're enjoying the XCOM series and you're excited for me to actually record properly in the future, do be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like a character named or created after you, be sure to let me know in the comments, and I'm happy to try and make it happen. But for now, this is Bowtie SoFly saying have a great day, and stay fly.